Good evening, and welcome to the first ever Hudson Schantz response to the State of the Union. I am pleased to say that I represent no one. I don't stand for a party. I don't speak for a people. This speech was not written by a team of professional speechwriters, such as Joe Biden's or Kim Reynolds. Instead, I speak from the heart and from the brain. I want you to imagine that you are an employer. You are responsible for hiring employees to serve at your pleasure and accomplish certain tasks. But there is an issue. When you hired your employees, they made all kinds of awesome claims. They claimed to be the best employees you would ever have. They would fix your problems. They would do whatever you wanted them to. But this is not what happened. Instead, they stopped listening. They used this job to profit in ways separate from their salary, taking money out of your pocket. They used the company credit card and spent more money than they could ever pay back. They focused all their energy on keeping their job, that they forgot to actually do their job. And even after all these failures, they came to you and asked for a raise. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the American Congress. You are their employer, they're the employees, and they have become a nightmare. What was once promised on the campaign trails is not being executed in their job. There is a crisis in our Congress, and one obvious solution that has been discussed for decades, but never acted upon. I hereby demand that the United States Congress passes legislation introducing term limits to both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Term limits will solve the problems that a corrupt Congress, such as the one we have, creates. A recent poll indicated that 82% of Americans are in favor of congressional term limits. This includes 89% of Republicans, 76% of Democrats, and 83% of independents. Where else do we see this kind of bipartisan support for an issue in 2022? So you must be asking, why hasn't this been passed already? Well, I ask you, if you voted on a bill that ultimately terminated your employment, would you support it? Thus, I call on all 535 members of Congress to put the people first. The members of Congress must put their own personal agendas to the side and do what is right for the United States. Members of Congress, listen to your people. Do your job and fight for what the people want. There is a reason why we, the people, are the first three and three largest letters in our Constitution. Congress is supposed to have the best interests of the people in their minds and hearts. However, they're in this fight for themselves. But of course you may wonder, how will these term limits solve the problems of Congress? How will they actually help our country? Why can't the voters just vote out the members who have served a long time? Let me begin by addressing the advantage of being an incumbent in a congressional election. First, name recognition for an uneducated voter is a tremendous factor. In congressional elections, it is likely that a voter has never even heard of the challenger. Why? An incumbent on average has 9 campaign funding dollars for every $1 of the challenger, not to mention the media attention that an incumbent will receive throughout their term in office. Additionally, an incumbent member of Congress is legally allowed to use taxpayer money to send political advertisements in the mail. A challenger, of course, needs to pay for each piece of mail sent through the USPS. And the most shocking and ridiculous stat of all, an incumbent member of Congress has a 98% re-election rate when they choose to run for more terms. While we cannot ask our founding fathers, I am not going out on a limb by saying they never intended such a ridiculous stat. A group of representatives that only changes at a 2% rate is not a Congress that represents the people. The right to free and fair elections is the most important part of any democracy. When a congressperson runs for the 5th consecutive term with tens of millions of more funding dollars than their opponent, this is not free nor fair. An incumbent does not win an election because they are the better candidate or because the people have more trust in him or her. the incumbent wins because of their power. Congressional term limits will also take pressure off of incumbents from focusing so much time on becoming reelected. With elections for the House occurring every 2 years, a large portion of a representative's term is spent on trying to become reelected. With term limits, a representative can focus on implementing policies that will help the American people instead of trying to stay in office. Today, the median age of our House of Representatives is 60. With no disrespect to anyone, don't you believe that number, similar to the numbers of gender and race, should be more like the average age of the American people? The Congress that represents the people should be composed of the people. I don't feel as if I am represented by a body of elites. With term limits, more people will have an opportunity to have their voice heard in Congress as a representative. Now, in order to implement congressional term limits, we will need to amend our Constitution. I have no doubt that once passed by Congress, the states will ratify the amendment and the President will sign the document into law. Congressional term limits are the first step in taking back our democracy. The days of being ruled by career politicians will come to an end. To close, I would like to quote one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin. Franklin said, "In free governments, the rulers are the servants, and the people their superiors and sovereigns. For the rulers to return among the people was not to degrade, but to promote them." Thank you. God bless America, and God bless the 10th Amendment.